Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Vienna with Glitter Baddies Boutique, and for today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a lava lamp style tumbler. Throughout the video, I'll show you all the supplies you'll need. Starting right here, we're using a Starbucks tumbler, 24 ounces, and I'm going to be using a 5/16 drill bit to drill just one hole. If you've seen some of my other tutorials, either on here or on TikTok, I normally do 2 holes. For this one, it's really not necessary, so we're just going to work with one. And here I am just drilling that hole. I did this in real time and I left the total time, so it really doesn't take too long to drill that hole. I just make sure to hold the cup firm and do not put too much pressure on the cup while drilling. You do not want to crack your tumbler. And then after you've drilled your hole, go ahead and clean up any of the excess plastic or acrylic that has come off the cup there. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my station here, and then we are going to need vegetable glycerin. The one I am going to show you right about now, this is the one I get from Amazon. You'll also need some baby oil. I got this one, I just picked it up at the store. It's the store brand, so nothing particular, just the original scent. And you do not need a lot of vegetable glycerin. You're gonna fill your tumbler up about 1/3 of the way with vegetable glycerin. So I'm pouring some here in a sauce bottle. You could also use a syringe. I just happen to have these available to me, so I'm gonna use that. And for this one, I'm going to be using some mica powder, but you can really use anything for this portion. Most people use alcohol inks or food coloring. You can even use acrylic paint, which I did end up using here on this one, but for now I'm just going to show you the mica powder. So I poured just a little bit. It's really hard to tell how much I poured in there, but you just want to make sure that your color portion of your lava lamp is going into the vegetable glycerin, which I'm doing here. And I mix it up thoroughly. This is how it looks. It's more of a pearlescent mica powder. And once you have it mixed up enough, you can go ahead and start pouring it into your tumbler. And like I mentioned, you're only going to fill your tumbler about 1/3 of the way. A good estimate, if you're using the Starbucks cup, is about that first line from the bottom. And again, this video is pretty much in real time. I did not speed anything up, so I'm going to show you pretty much how long it took to pour this in. The first time I did one of these lava lamp tumblers, I don't remember it giving me this many issues trying to be poured in. But if you're having this issue like I did with this one, it was just a lot of air bubbles were kind of getting mixed in there, and it made it hard for the vegetable glycerin to go down. Basically, I was just pouring a little bit and then kind of tilting my tumbler around to get that glycerin inside. I also mentioned before that you can use acrylic paint. I did end up adding just a little drop or two of acrylic paint into this mica powder. It just wasn't dark enough, so I really wanted that black color to come through. So literally just 1-2 little drops mixed in, and then I went ahead and continued pouring in the vegetable glycerin. That way it would get mixed up with the color I currently had. It will mix up eventually, so don't worry about that if you're like me and decided to add additional color to it later. But anyways, continuing on, I went ahead and continued filling my tumbler, again 1/3 of the way. I've seen people go half and half. I think 1/3 was just enough color for this style of tumbler that we're working on. And then personally, I use 91% isopropyl alcohol to clean my tumblers. It's not as harsh as 98%, so just be careful when applying rubbing alcohol to your tumblers. You do not want to mess up that plastic. But I clean off the tumbler here as well as I can, and I'm going to pour in my baby oil. I just poured it straight from the bottle. There was a little nozzle on there, so I just kind of squirted that in the hole there, and I got a little close in so you can kind of see what I mean. I'm just pouring it directly in. And FYI, for this style of tumbler, you do not need to degas your tumblers like you normally would. If you have seen my previous videos, I normally let my tumblers degas for about 24 hours or so. Because there's no water or any like air bubbles in this one, I just continue the process within the same day. So that's something I like about these tumblers, is they kind of go by quickly. You don't have a lot of wait time. And here I am going back in with my vegetable glycerin to continue filling it up all the way. And I know it looks a little crazy, but I promise the vegetable glycerin and the baby oil do separate. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm tilting my tumbler at an angle to get as much air out as possible. However, you do want to leave a small air bubble of some kind within your tumbler. That's going to help get your glycerin and baby oil flowing properly. So here I am doing that. I'll show you here in a second what air bubble I am referring to. Some people may leave a bigger air bubble in theirs, but I think the size that I left was just enough. And this part is optional. You don't need to do that. Here's that little air pocket I'm talking about. So again, optional. I just think it helped flow a lot better. At the end, you'll see what I mean. So after you are happy with how full it is and your ratios, go ahead and completely clean your tumbler. I cannot stress that enough. That is probably the number one issue I see makers have doing these tumblers is leaking. And I will tell you, it's typically because of the baby oil if you're using baby oil in your tumbler. So make sure it's nice and thoroughly cleaned off or your UV resin will not settle properly. So I've cleaned my tumbler, and then I'm going to use a small piece of clear packaging tape to cover my hole. The reason I'm not using a mini glue stick or a plug like I normally would is because I do not want that baby oil or glycerin slipping out while I'm trying to seal it. So I'm trying to keep this cup as steel as possible to make sure that there are no leaks, no issues later. So I'm using UV resin from Resin Rockers. It is probably the best UV resin on the market in my opinion. And again, my surface is completely clean. I'm going to go in with my UV resin right over that hole and packaging tape. I apply a little bit of heat with my lighter here to pop any air bubbles. I'm going to cure that for 120 seconds under my lamp. Again, all these supplies I'm mentioning will be listed in the caption below. And I initially don't feel any leaking when I first shake it up. So I'm going to paper test it. I have a blank piece of paper here. So there's that little air bubble I was talking about. And it looks really good. So I'm really happy with this. And then I'm going to place it on this piece of paper for at least a couple hours just to see if there's any leaking coming out, and checking out that flow. Looks really good. And it's been here for a few hours. I don't see any leaks. I'm happy with it. But I'm going to go ahead and clean it off one more time before doing a final seal on this. And again, make sure it is completely clean. Baby oil is so tricky to work with. You want to make sure your hands are washed as well. And for the final seal, I'm just going to pour a little bit of that UV resin down again. And I'm going to mix up some mica powder. I will say to make sure not to put too much. You do want to make sure that your UV resin has light going through to still cure it properly. So just be careful. Do not put too much paint or mica powders mixed in with your UV resin, but you can use UV resin to seal this mixed in with some color. However, this portion is also optional. You do not need to color the bottom if you do not want to. I just think it kind of brings the whole look together. I've had customers tell me they really like that. I go that extra step to cover that hole in the bottom and make sure it looks nice and flush. So totally optional though. As long as your cup is sealed and not leaking, I think that's the most important thing. So if you are doing this, go ahead, get it nice and thinned out. Make sure it's nice and flush. Apply some heat. Go ahead and cure that. And again, this next step is also optional. I'm going to put a care instruction sticker on the bottom of my tumbler. It has the care instructions as well as my business logo. And I'm going to seal that over with another final coat of UV resin. Repeating the same process. I know this last portion is probably a little tedious, but totally optional if you're going to give this final look. Anyways, so here we are. I'm just thinning out that UV resin. I just like to tilt my cup down and around. That way it spreads out that UV resin nice and evenly. And again, going to clean off the little edges. I do not like when the UV resin gets stuck to the rim there. Again, just trying to make sure it's nice and flush. And again, apply some heat, clean the rest of your cup off, and cure that for about 120 seconds as well. And while this last coat is curing, I'm going to get my decal ready. This is a pre-printed, laminated, permanent vinyl decal from Cuts Vinyl. With these cup decals, they are meant for the cold 24-ounce reusable cups, but they will work on your double wall tumblers as well. I always get asked if I seal my decals or if there's anything else needed to be done with these. They're literally this easy. I just weeded out the background and any negative space, apply some transfer tape, and apply it to my tumbler. You do want to make sure you wipe your tumbler down, but that's literally all it takes. It's not necessary to seal your vinyl with epoxy. You certainly can, and I do have customers who will occasionally request that, but these are permanent laminated decals. There's no need to seal them if you do not feel comfortable using epoxy or if you don't want to take that extra step. Normally I don't, but again, I will by request. So after I lay down the vinyl, I just rub out any excess bubbles that might have gotten underneath the vinyl, and that's it. All done. It took probably less than an hour or two total working time, and you get this nice lava lamp style tumbler. I love the little droplets and the stream, the way it flows. I think this came out great. If you guys are interested, I do have tons of tutorials on my TikTok, so make sure y'all go check that out. I post daily on that page. But as always, I do hope that this tumbler tutorial was helpful, and if you guys have any suggestions, make sure y'all drop them below. And if you haven't already, make sure y'all hit the subscribe button to get notified anytime I post a new video here on this channel. And make sure to check out our Facebook group, Snow Globe Tumblers and more, which will also be linked below for you. And thank you all so much for tuning in today and for all the support, and I will talk to you all soon.